Nonetheless, it falls to my part to deliver the first toast to the bride, and it's not only my duty as the best man, but it is also, of course, my great pleasure and honor to do so. I'm quite delighted to be here to do it, and I thank Roger and Natalie for inviting me to do it. Rob has already taken care of our German and French visitors by greeting them in German and French, so I will do nothing more than simply say, Willkommen in Vancouver, bienvenue à Vancouver. I do feel some responsibility to Roger's parents to make a greeting in Hindi as well, which I'm going to do, and I don't speak Hindi, but I practiced for days and days and days and hope that this will come out. I've known Roger for so long that, you know, this is actually a greeting to them, or if you like, a blessing to them, but it's really being done for the sake of Roger's parents, if nothing else, on this very happy wedding day. Namaste, Hamara Ashirwad Tumhare Sat Sada Hega. Wow!
One more time.
Say it again.
Bahut Dhanyawad.
Bahut dhanyawad.
Bahut Dhanyawad. That was a traditional, I think it literally means, or something close to, our blessings be upon you, and it's, although that's a very generic term, it's apparently used specifically for couples when they're getting married. So, our blessings be upon you, Roger and Natalie.
Thank you.
I would be remiss if I didn't, before I go any further, if I didn't comment on truly how beautiful and lovely the bridesmaids are they not? Would you join me? Now, even though I'm here to give a toast officially to Natalie, I'm going to, and I will speak, of course, about Natalie in just a moment. I want to talk about Roger first. I am his best man after all, and it seems only fitting. I've known Roger for approximately 23 years.
Wow.
I don't actually remember the first time I met Roger, but I just asked Roger before, and he doesn't actually remember meeting me either. But it was about 1991, thereabouts. Regardless, he clearly made a strong impression on me, and it's not hard to see why. You know, knowing someone like Roger for so long, there are so many stories that one can tell, and so few that can be told in mixed company. So I will restrict myself to a couple of small tales, and they're really, if you're like, indicative of the measure of a man more than anything else. The first story I want to tell is kind of it's mildly humorous, not all that humorous, but it's a cute story. It happened about 20 years ago, and actually, ironically enough, it happened at a home, at a party at the home of our friend Rob Zalodic, as a matter of fact. And Roger had just returned from a trip to India, where he'd been visiting his homeland, and his ancestral homeland anyway, and he'd been touring around and getting a great impression of the place. And one of the places he visited was the western Indian state of Goa. Many of you know, that was up until the early 1960s, I think 1961, it was a Portuguese possession.
74.
No, in 1961, actually, Stuart. 1961 was the time when the uprising, Operation, I can't remember the name of it, but anyway, an operation by the Indian government to overtake the Portuguese officials. And now, in any event, I do digress. In any event, as you know, it was the center of Christianization for the East, the part of the Portuguese, and the center of Portuguese culture in Asia for very many centuries. Now, when Roger was there, he discovered one of the truly wonderful anachronisms of modern India, and that is that most wonderful of fortified wines, port. I was just as surprised as anyone else to learn that they actually produce port in India, in Goa of all places. I suppose that makes some sense. And Roger came back from India with these laminated foil packages like Capri Sun, like drinks full of port. And he brought these out at this party at Rob Zalottik's place, and we started like sipping them as if they were Jew. We drank them right out of metal containers, out of foil packages. And it was actually quite good, wasn't it, Rob? Now, that may be because we were 23 years earlier or whatever, or younger, and we didn't know any better, but it seemed to me that it was actually decent port. The reason I tell this story is because it's actually a very great sign of Roger's kindness and generosity. He was on the other side of the world, and although Roger and I were friends, we were certainly not as close friends as we are now, and it made a great impression on me because it showed that he was really thinking of his friends and people he cared about, even from the other side of the world. And it really, that story stayed with me for a long time, even though it may have seemed to him like a small gesture. It really was actually a very touching gesture in its own way. The other thing I want to tell you about Roger is something that's happened more recently in the last couple of years. Roger exercised the patience of a saint in assisting me in buying a new car. Well, it was actually a used car, but a new used car, if you like. And we went out for weekend after weekend after weekend going to find just the right car. And this was a car for me, and I was bored going out. And yet Roger was more than happy and prepared to help out and support me and give me information and provide me with all the necessary skills to do our best to cheat the cheaters, so to speak, the used car salesmen. And in more recent times, of course, he's been very instrumental in providing me with advice on transitioning to a new career. He's been an absolute saint on that front as well. And it's again, a sign of his patience. The fact that you can rely on Roger at any time. He's really the rock of Gibraltar among friends. And I can't stress that enough. When people think of Roger, and myself included, we think of his love of cars, his love of politics, aircraft, as we saw in video, poker, video games, of course his hair. And I'm not saying I don't think of those things. I do think of those things when I think of Roger, but I don't think of them as much as I did. Nowadays, I actually think more of the man. Kind, loyal, honorable, and really a true friend. And 23 or so years on, when I think of Roger, I'm reminded of Shakespeare's words in Richard II. I count myself in nothing else so happy as in a soul remembering my good friend.
Wow.
Thank you, Roger. That was the most sanitized version of Roger I could do. Let me move on to Natalie. When I first met Natalie, and my wife Lydia and I first met Natalie, Roger had started dating her and was very excited about this, and I suggested, or maybe even he suggested, I can't remember which, but we suggested that they come over to our house for dinner and meet the family, and she was absolutely lovely, absolutely effortlessly charming. She was effortlessly good with our children. I must say she actually gave the impression of being slightly in awe of Roger, if I may say, but it was cute, it was very adorable. And she immediately kind of cast a spell over Lydia and myself. My dear wife Lydia is here with us as well this evening. And it was really actually Lydia who hit the nail on the head with regards to Natalie. I should back up and say that Lydia has been very concerned about Roger, if I could put it that way. She's always said, Roger's such a good man, we've got to find him a wife, we've got to find him a wife, we've got to find him a wife. And I was sort of like, well, I've spent 20 years trying, you take it over. But when we met Natalie, Lydia said to me, that's the one. That's it.
Wow.
She said, that's it. Now, Lydia and I have only been married for 9 years, and I realize that's not like forever. I'm not suggesting anything of the sort, but I've been married to Lydia long enough to know that when she says that, she means it. And all through this marriage prep, over the last number of months that Roger and Natalie have been engaged, I've been giving Roger little pieces of advice. Like, for example, the most meaningful one, right at the beginning, as soon as he told me that they were engaged, after giving my congratulations, I said, Roger, this is the most important piece of advice I can give you. I said, if there's something that you want at the wedding, you tell Natalie, okay? If it's really, really meaningful to you, you say, Natalie, I want X. And then you just get the hell out of the way. Out of the way. Because Natalie and her mother and the family and everybody else are just going to come steamrolling through like the bride is supposed to do at these things. And I think, Roger, you would agree, it was fine advice, was it not?
You did a fantastic job.
Thank you. But today, when I arrived at Roger's apartment to get ready for this wonderful wedding occasion, I said, Roger, I have one last piece of advice to give you. I've been giving you little tidbits along the way. I have a last piece of, not so much advice, but I have one last little piece to give you. I said, Roger, you have nothing to worry about today. You picked the right girl. You picked the right girl.
Wow.
And there was kind of that moment where it dawned on him that he, well, not that it hadn't occurred to him before, but I mean, it was one of those moments where it was a special moment, I think, between Roger and myself, that we realized that, you know, he'd really done good. After all these years, he'd really done very well. Natalie's such a sweet girl. We've had the pleasure of knowing her for most of the 3 years that Roger and Natalie have been together. She's been so good for Roger. I can't even tell you the ways that she's brought him out of his, I don't want to say out of his shell, that's not right the way you would put it, but she's provided a lift to Roger that is immeasurable, that I haven't seen with anyone else before. As I said, she's so good with our children. Lydia and I have been blessed with 3 children so far, God willing, many more. I've been saying to a number of people here tonight that I'm hoping to have my own soccer team. And most people have laughed at me when I said that, but I'm actually quite serious. I mean, I'm hoping for 11. I'd really like to field my own soccer team, but Lydia seems to be behind that idea, actually. So and I should take that opportunity at this point to wish Roger and Natalie great fecundity, a great many children, and we hope that our team of 11 will play your team of 11 before too long. As many of you know who've met Lydia, she's of Chinese extraction, although like Roger, she was born here, she doesn't speak Chinese, she's ethnically Chinese, but when the 4 of us get together, it's like the United Nations, I mean, it's ridiculous. Over the years, the many years that Roger and I have known each other, of course, the topic of women has come up, as it tends to do among men, and both of us would say to one another, Roger would say to me, women are crazy. Or I'd say to them something similar, women are crazy. But having found my own love, and Roger now having found his own love, I kind of wonder whether maybe it's us who's crazy. And I want to leave you on this final note. I'm going to quote Shakespeare again. I apologize, but I love Shakespeare and he's kind of a genius, so I sort of feel like I should. Love is merely a madness, and I tell you, deserves as well a dark house and a whip as madmen do. And the reason why they are not so punished and cured is that the lunacy is so ordinary that the whippers are in love too. And on that slightly hilarious and beautiful note, I would ask you all to be upstanding, and please join me. I'm happy to announce the button on my tuxedo is just broken off. Join me, please, in a toast to the bride, to Natalie.